Welcome to TYT Sports, everybody, with RotoWire managing editor Chris Liss. Chris, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks, Ben.
Great time of the year. I mean, it just doesn't disappoint. The baseball playoffs got off to a slightly sluggish start, but, that Royal comeback and the Dodger-Mets series has been incredibly intriguing. Anyway, so great time of year, in part because you get in the baseball playoffs and you get in the NFL. And now we're 5 weeks into the NFL season, and we really can see that there is when you make bets, when you make your fantasy picks, when you do your draft, so much has to do with coaching. Like, I can't take the Chiefs because Andy, even though we're both taking the Chiefs,
right, yeah.
But I can't take the Chiefs because,
I violated that rule in every way this week.
Right. Andy Reid will in the end will do something horrible that will take your money away. But that said, the good coaches separate themselves, and those teams, they elevate they elevate bad teams to average, and they take average teams to good, and they make good teams great. So we had a look at a Deadspin piece from a couple of years ago about the worst coaches in the history of the NFL, and I think they're on 2 of them. They have some good choices there, but I have my own thoughts. But who you see? Who's in your list of the worst coaches?
Well, I'm a Giants fan that lived through the Ray Handley era, so that was pretty bad. That was a Super Bowl-ish team that got taken down to just a joke, and I don't remember the specifics of why he was so bad. I just remember
that's the problem I had too, is that I know these guys were terrible, but I can't quite remember why. But Handley took Parcells' team, right? Yeah. But for Handley, and the same thing for one of the guys I'll name, on face alone, just the way they looked, you're like, you don't know what's happening. Yeah. And that's what I feel like with Jim Caldwell. I'm like, and Jay Gruden, like, no, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying that you have a firm grasp of all that you need to do.
Right, you look lost. You look lost. Overwhelmed.
Yeah, you look overwhelmed. That's right. Ray Handley looked overwhelmed.
He was totally overwhelmed. And he was some like mathematician or something. But
there's a little bit of Jim Tomsula in him. Like, how are you, like, you're a high school coach.
Right.
This is the NFL.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. The wrong guy kind of moves up the ranks, or they didn't know who to get or something. A lot of guys are recycled that should never have gotten there in the first place. But I think there are some current coaches we can talk about besides Caldwell, who's a very good one. Ken Wisenpunt has never liked a punt on 4th and short. He's never liked a 4th and short in plus territory that he couldn't punt on. I mean, he will figure out a way to punt no matter what. They went 2-14 last year. I don't know why he got rehired. I don't think the team's going to be good this year. I fade them almost reflexively because of him. He's just the most cowardly guy. A couple others. Chuck Pagano was terrible. I feel like Chuck Pagano not only does he punt all the time when he can, but he's never getting his best players the ball. He's part of an organization that went out and got, players in their late 30s. I mean, Andre Johnson he's 34, and Frank Gore, who's actually been okay at 32.
And you got to give Andre Johnson last week.
He was a really good, when that second string tight end looking guy comes in and makes a couple plays.
Okay, I got it.
I actually didn't see that game because I TiVo'd the first half and never.
2 touchdowns, big catches. He played well.
Okay.
He wasn't extending the field, but.
Right, I asked my Twitter followers, and I asked people when we were doing the XM show. I said, I didn't see the first half. Did he look legit, or was it just kind of right place, right time? They're like, it was nothing special. He was kind of open. He caught a ball. He ran in the end zone. It wasn't like he made any real plays. But anyway, regardless, I think Chuck Pagano's terrible. And I also think there's a lot of just cowardly coaches that are given credit for being better than they are. They may be good motivators, or they may be good scheme guys, but like Andy Reid is horrible at the clock, always does the cowardly thing. Gary Kubiak has never gone for it on 4th down when he should. John Fox, I put in that category. Some of these are not terrible coaches because they're good at other aspects of the job, but they check the box of being incredibly frustrating to bet on or watch because they do things that are suboptimal to winning the game.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, again, a guy like Norv Turner, who had obviously great success running offenses. I mean, he had some pretty great players for his greatest success running offenses. But, I mean, Norv Turner would snatch better than anybody in Washington. Oakland, I give him a pass because everybody lost there, and their organization was run by clowns. But in San Diego, unbelievable what was not achieved in San Diego under Norv Turner. Jenk and I thought that it took McCoy a full season to get rid of the stench.
But what about last Monday?
And I thought it last year too. Right. I'm like, maybe Phillip Rivers is just terrible around the goal line, because there was a lot of that with Turner, a lot of it, and maybe Rivers panics. I don't know what. Right. God abandons him in that moment.
It must be that.
Yeah,
That's usually my first go-to. They were the Detroit Lions of the AFC, basically.
That's right. That's right.
And there were, but
Except they weren't quite as they were better most of the time.
Their skill players were better, but they had that knack, that special knack.
They had a knack for killing you gambling, killing you if you're a fan.
Oh, just ruining everything.
Ruining everything, and they did it again. It was do
you know how many suicides have been as a result of the Chargers?
The Chargers last week in that game, and it was so Norv Turner-esque when they threw up that second half stat. At that point, I think they were up. I think it was tied. And you look at it, and you're like, they had 16 second half first downs, and the Steelers had one.
Right.
One. And you're like, what is this game tied? But again, it's all orchestrated between the 20s, and then you get close and you turn it all over, and they score, and it's a 14-point swing, and you lose the game.
Yeah, no, it was horrible. But McCoy, I think the jury's out. I think he's a cowardly coach. Like, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't have the track record that.
No. He's not. You can't put him in Norv Turner's league. Norv Turner was an exceptional guy for pulling a defeat from the jaw. And again, the cowardliness is amazing. I mean, the coaches who we deify correctly, Parcells, Belichick, Jimmy Johnson, he kept the ball. I mean, these same coaches who we're talking about, Andy Reid, Mike McCoy, all these guys, John Fox, Chuck Pagano, they are all going to say after the game, can't turn the ball over. And then on 4th and 2, you turn the ball over. You give it to the other team.
Right.
It's a turnover.
Voluntarily.
You're voluntarily turning it over when there's a chance. Most times you get 2 yards. Most of the time you achieve 2 yards. You might not. But either way, you're talking about 40 yards. That's what you're arguing about, 40 yards. Keep the ball. We're not idiots. When it's 4th and 8 at your own 13, you punt.
Right.
Like, I got it.
Right.
I got it. But when you have a chance to keep the ball, realistically, and you have, especially when you have talented players and a good offense, right? I'm not suggesting, we're not saying that every time Brian Hoyer or Josh McCown has a chance to get, that those guys, that's different. But when you have a talented player, when you have Phillip Rivers as your quarterback, when you got these receivers, when you have Gates, when you have backs, keep the ball. Don't turn it over on purpose.
Yeah, and I just want to put Tom Coughlin. I got into a little debate on email. It's a Bills fan that I bet with and stuff. I was complaining about Coughlin. He said, Coughlin's a Hall of Famer. And Coughlin will probably get into the Hall of Fame because he won 2 Super Bowls, and NFL, that's what everything is. And I think Coughlin is a good leader of men, and he's respected, and he's not a total joke. But his endgame decisions are so terrible.
They're amazing.
And do you realize this last game, okay? The Giants get down to the 1.5-yard line, okay? And they're tied. And they go in to kick a field goal with like 3 minutes left. Okay, the Niners had just shredded them 3 times. They decided to go for the field goal. They get it. The Niners, Chris Collinsworth foolishly says, "Oh, well, if you got a hot quarterback, you got to take the points." No, it's the opposite. If you have a hot quarterback, you got to get the touchdown because you know they're going to score.
I heard at least some indecision from Collinsworth. I think he was almost like cutting Coughlin a break because I heard him. What I thought I said was, "I guess you got to take the lead." Which is, again, what most people think.
But then he said, but if you have a hot quarterback, I could see taking the points. It's like, no, it's the opposite. And then secondly, on the way back, the Niners drive down. They're deep in Giants territory. There's 2 minutes left. Thank God Carlos Hyde runs out of bounds. That saved them a timeout. And then they decided to pass on 1st and goal from the 1 or the 2.
Yeah.
That saved them time. And then luckily they scored on 2nd down, so the Giants had plenty of time. You know what we didn't see is any timeouts on defense by Coughlin because he's out to lunch. Dude, they're going to at least tie, period. They may very well take the lead, which they did. How can you risk them getting stuffed on 2nd down?
So one thing that Deadspin put on this list, and this is a little old school. They put a couple old school guys. Turner, I have to mention. I have to mention Wayne Fontes, too. I mean, fire Wayne Fontes. It's funny every time when the Lions. I mean, this year you just look on Twitter for somebody to tweet. Now when the Lions lose, fire Wayne Fontes. That's funny.
Well, and he's part of the reason the Lions are the Lions. He's part of the legacy.
So there's a thing that football does that sports do less than they used to. But there used to be the retreading of coaches. The NBA led the way in this.
Yeah.
Kevin Locker, the guy just kept getting hired. But the NFL used to do it. Marion Campbell was 9th on this Deadspin list. He was 34-80-1 in his career. And they say just a remarkable resume. Fired by the Falcons 5 games into the 76th season, went back to being a defensive coordinator with the Eagles, helped them to Super Bowl 15. That's the Super Bowl where they lost to the Raiders. He then took over for Dick Vermeil in '83 in Philadelphia. Didn't win more than 6 games over the next 3 seasons. But the Falcons hired him back in 1987 because Vermeil and then UCLA coach Terry Donahue, their first 2 options, turned them down. When Campbell eventually retired with a 3-9 start in '89, he issued the following word salad of a statement. I have chosen this avenue to clear the picture for the ownership to get on with the future of their franchise. So great. Another guy on this list, David Shula, who was just terrible. And like when he left, when the Bengals finally fired him after 5 years.
Right. Well, nepotism goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, and Mike Brown, that's a terrible, run organization. I'm stunned at their success now. But when they finally fired David Shula, he went to work running the steakhouses.
Right.
He didn't.
He was out of football.
NFL head coach for 5 years, and then I'm just going to manage some steakhouses. That's crazy. I also love another kind of coach that gets hired. They put on this list, and I wouldn't have remembered him, but it's a great call. They have him third. Coach 1 year with the Vikings, Les Steckel.
I remember Les Steckel, 3-13, yeah.
Yeah, and his big thing was, and Deadspin reminded me of it, his big thing was he was a Marine, and he'd led men in battle in Vietnam, and so he was like, I'm a Marine. You don't have to tell me about coaching football. And, and you want to be like, no disrespect, not the same thing.
Yeah,
yeah.
Right.
Like, good for you for leading Marines.
Right.
That's a thing you should be proud of. It not only doesn't qualify you to be a head coach, it may disqualify you from being a head coach because your thought is, we're men. We're gonna show them how it's done.
Right.
Bill Walsh never thought, I'm gonna pound this yard in to show that we can get it. He's like, they think I'm gonna pound it, and I'm gonna trick them. I don't care.
Right.
I don't want any of my guys hit on this play. This will be great, and somebody will be wide open in the end zone.
Yeah. Les Steckel, I remember him. Yeah, he was bad. I didn't remember the exact details of why. Mike Tice was pretty bad.
Mike Tice was pretty bad. I thought he got
the Randy ratio. I like that.
I thought that's right for the Randy ratio. I thought Tice got a slightly bad rap because he became the definition of terrible coaches, but it may have been correct.
Yeah.
And then another guy you can tell on face alone that they shouldn't be a head coach, and I think he's number 1 on this list. But I thought of him instantly when this segment was proposed. Marty Morningweg.
Oh yeah, Marty. But he was an okay offensive coordinator.
Sure, I got it. Some of these, look, Wade Phillips.
Good defensive coordinator.
Great defensive coordinator.
Horrible coach.
Great defensive coordinator. Just can't be in charge of the whole thing. But Morningweg, you were like, you can't make this call. You don't know. You don't know the rules. You're like, you could see his head buzzing. Like, but again, just run the plays, call the offenses. Totally good at it. Make a nice living. That's some of the worst coaches going all the way back into the 70s up to today. What more could you want? Chris List, managing editor, RotoWire. Be sure to subscribe to RotoWire if you play fantasy sports. It's unquestionably worth it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Subscribe to our channel somewhere here on the screen.